Hello, everybody. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us. This is Tim Borio, and I am the Director of Marketing here at Alliance Solutions Group. Today with us, we have Bernard Ross of Core Associates, and he is going to be talking about and showing the TimberScan 100 product for Sage 100 Contractor. We have a lot of customers using the TimberScan for 300, which is for Sage 300 construction and real estate. And then, there's been so much success with that product that they went ahead and developed the TimberScan 100 product. So I do want to take care of a couple quick housekeeping items. I want to make sure that everybody can hear me. So if you can you please click the button to raise your hand? That should be in the GoToWebinar control panel. Perfect. Thank you. And so with that said, everybody who was invited to this session and is on, you're all Sage 100 Contractor users, and they're all customers of Alliance Solutions Group. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm not even really going to go into my PowerPoint. I'm going to go ahead and change the controller over to Bernard. We've been working with Core Associates for a very long time, and for the 300 product, and also have a number of customers with the TimberScan 100. Okay, Bernard, I just made you the presenter.
Thank you, Tim.
Right.
Let me just show my screen here. Hi, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity to show you TimberScan for Sage 100. So basically, I'm Bernard Ross. I'm one of the co-founders of the company. So I've been around this for a very long time. This is me, the old guy. Say hi. And as Tim was mentioning, we started with AP approval back in 2004 with Sage 300. At that time, it was called Timberline. And at this point in time, we have over 1,800 companies using TimberScan, over 32,000 users. And a couple of years ago, our clients like Alliance asked us to develop a product for Sage 100. So we have developed that, and we're very pleased with that. So we have the experience in the construction market, and now we have the experience with Sage 100. So what TimberScan 100 does is it serves two primary functions. One is to automate the AP approval process so that your approvers can approve invoices either in the office or in the field using TimberScan either on a computer, on a iPad or other device, or on your phone. The second component of it is an enterprise content management solution. So besides getting all the capabilities of keeping track of your invoices and approving your invoices, we also take care of all your other document management needs, all within that package. There's no extra cost for that. So any kind of document, whether it's a JPEG or a Word document, Excel, email document, any kind of form, any kind of document can be acquired into TimberScan. And if it's invoices, obviously, it's totally linked to Sage so that there's no need to set up. All your vendors are being read from Sage, or everything's being read from Sage. And for any other type of document that you may want to acquire, there's a little bit of a setup in that, which I'm going to cover during my demo, so you can really acquire any kind of document. Now, not only can you acquire the documents, but you can also set up workflows. So if there are certain documents, obviously the invoices are the ones that come to mind first. You can obviously set up workflows and have approvers, multiple approvers, approving invoices, but you can also set up workflows for other types of documents like contracts, change orders, purchase orders, etc. So any document can have a workflow associated with it. TimberScan stores these documents in a secure data folder, and there's a full audit trail for every single document. It goes to the point where if somebody actually changes something, like let's say an invoice was coded to go to a certain cost code and the approver changed it to another cost code, there's an audit trail that'll show what the original was and what the change was. So there's a full audit trail for everything that you do. And of course, everything is secure. And then all your documents can be shared in a number of different ways. So we're going to start off with focusing on the AP approval process. Many companies still use file folders, or they may use Microsoft to save the documents, but they're not secure, and it's very difficult to find documents using that method. So we totally automate that. We actually have, the way that TimberScan works right now is documents are acquired, and invoices and other documents are acquired, and the documents obviously live in TimberScan. Right now, the data entry is done in Sage. So if you have a dual monitor scenario, you can do your data entry in Sage. Even if you don't have a dual monitor scenario, you can split the screen and see the invoice on one side of your monitor and the data entry on the other side of your monitor. Once the invoices are data entered, then they go through the approval process. So the only time that you're inside of Sage is when you initially do the data entry and when you're ready to cut the check. Everything else, all the approvals, all the checking, all of that is done inside of TimberScan. And that's basically the workflow right now. We are coming out with an alternate workflow, and you can choose either workflow. And in this workflow, everything is done inside of TimberScan until the invoice is approved, and then it flows into Sage. So those are the two workflows that we have. So with that, I'm going to start the demo. So I have TimberScan up and running. This is your main screen in TimberScan. It's a browser-based system, so it lives on your server, but because it's a browser-based system, you don't need Citrix or Terminal Server to access TimberScan when you're out in the field. So that's why you can use a mobile solution to do the approvals out in the field without any additional cost associated with it. So the first step in this process is to do your acquire. So under data entry, the first thing is let's get those invoices into the system. So there's a number of ways of doing that. You can either drag and drop the invoices as they come in, or you can scan them into a folder and then bring them into TimberScan. So either way is fine. So you're going to choose data entry, and the type of images that we deal with. There's three types of images that we deal with. One is invoices. That's pretty straightforward. If it's an invoice, you choose the image type invoice. If it's not an invoice, it's a document or a check. So it's pretty easy to determine the type of documents that you're dealing with. And then let's say you're scanning the documents, or you're dragging and dropping them from email into a folder onto your system. When you click on Select Files, it remembers where you're saving your invoices. So you don't have to go looking through your drive to find out where they are. It remembers it. So you just select all the invoices, it brings them in, you click on Continue, and then you can review the invoices that have come in. So this is the first of 6 invoices, and I can size the invoices. If the invoices are crooked, I can straighten them. I can obviously make it larger to see them. You can make it larger, smaller, do all that stuff. You can even highlight stuff. Typically during the acquire process, you're not going to highlight or put sticky notes on it, but you can. But during the data entry, you can do the same thing. You can put sticky notes, you can highlight, you can do all that other stuff. So you review all the invoices, make sure they came in correctly. You can go right through them. Another way to do it is looking at the thumbnails here. You can see what the invoices look like, and once they're okay, you click on acquire, and then you're ready for data entry. So that's the acquire process, which is pretty straightforward. So at this point, I'm going to go into the data entry process. So with the data entry process, I'm going to go into invoice entry. And now I have my first invoice here. So this is my first invoice. And since I'm doing this and I don't have a dual monitor to show you, I'm going to do it on one monitor. It's very, very easy. So here is my invoice information coming from TimberScan. I also have Sage open. So here's my Sage information. And since all of you know how to do data entry in Sage, it's very easy. Just do your data entry in Sage, and then you click. Once you finish the data entry, the next invoice pops up, you enter it. Next invoice pops up, you enter it. Very, very easy process. So you have an invoice on your left side, you have your data entry on the right side. You do the data entry. It's very, very straightforward. Now, a couple things happen after you do the data entry. This invoice, I already entered. If I entered invoices every time, I'd have thousands of invoices. Every time I do a demo, I have thousands of invoices on my system. So people know how to do data entry, so I don't spend a lot of time on that. But what happens after you enter an invoice, it changes the status. So you know when you have a new invoice, the status is open. But once you enter the invoice, the information into TimberScan, TimberScan automatically changes the status to review. So if you're in TimberScan, of course, you're going to know which invoices are in the approval process, but you can also see that in Sage. The other thing that TimberScan does is it automatically attaches a copy of that invoice. So if you're in Sage and you're reviewing this, you can always click on the invoice and see the invoice image there right inside of Sage. So that's data entry system with TimberScan. It's there already. But if you prefer to do data entry all in TimberScan, within the next 2-3 months, we're going to be offering that as an alternative way of doing it, where you can do the data entry in TimberScan and then it flows into Sage after it's been approved. And the advantage of that is you can do partial entry. So if your data entry people aren't comfortable with cost codes and categories, then you would do the data entry in TimberScan, and you can leave the cost code and category out, and then when the approver gets it, they can add it, and then it goes clean into Sage after it's gone through the approval process. So with that, I'm going to continue, and go back to my larger screen here so you can see it a little bit better. So that is how we do the data entry. So once the data entry is done, the next thing that happens is the approvers then can start approving invoices. So now from a management perspective, accounting can go into the system and run a report on all your approvers and see what all your approvers and what invoices they have, and when the invoices were given to them. And obviously you can click on a link and see the images. So accounting always has exposure on every single approver and what invoices are still in the approval process. So now as an approver, you're going to go into the approver is going to go into TimberScan. They're going to sign into TimberScan as an approver. And since I'm both a data entry and approver, I don't have to sign in again. And then I just go into my document automation, and I look at the invoices that are ready for approval. So now I see I've got 5 invoices that are ready for approval. So I can review the invoices and choose them this way, which is a a columnar view, or I can use what's called a card view. And people often like that better to use the card view. And you can size it the way you want. So with the card view, you can then review all the invoices. If you want to look at an invoice, you can see the details of the invoice right here. If you want to, if you're okay with this and you're okay with the amount of the invoice and all that information, you can approve it right from here. If you want to see the invoice in detail, you can open it up this way and see it in detail. You can also go in and select that invoice and any other invoices that you want to execute, and then you can review the invoice. So here I'm in the data entry, and I can see all the details about the invoice. And when I go down to job cost, I can see where that was, what the cost code was, and what the cost type was. So when I click on the cost codes, I can then go ahead and change the cost code. So if this should have been demolition instead of site work, I can save it and change it. And this change will automatically change inside of Sage. So the minute this is changed, it automatically is linked to Sage and it changes it inside of Sage. So this is invoice 4848, 484848. So if I go back inside of Sage and I find that invoice 4848, here it is, 484848, and I go into my cost codes, notice that's already changed to demolition. It was site work originally, now it's changed to demolition. So the beauty of this is what's in Sage, regardless of what's going on in TimberScan, is always correct. It's always going to match what your people have done. So that's an important distinction about this. And the approval process is really, really easy. So now, of course, you can approve it on a computer. You can also approve it on a mobile device. So if I go to my mobile device, here you can this is how it would look on a mobile device. You can select what you want to see. You can look at it here. You can size it by making it larger or smaller. And you can also flip it. I'm just going to change this to 75%. That's a little too big. You can flip it, and you can see the invoice this way as well on a mobile device, on an iPhone or an iPad, and you can approve it right from your mobile device. And that is part of the system. There's no additional cost for that. So you got the mobile approval as well. And that's it for the approval side of this. It's really very straightforward because all your information is here. You know, you can approve it, you can reject it, you can check the notes that are on the system. Now notice that right here in my notes on 718, I changed the cost code from 2000 to 2200. So the audit trail is very complete. Who acquired the invoice, who did the data entry, who did the approval, any changes that were done, all of that is complete. The other thing that you can do with TimberScan, I didn't show you this, is if there's purchase orders or receiving tickets or anything like that, you can also, during data entry, attach them, or you can attach them during the approval process. So you have the ability to attach a pertinent document so that not only do you have the invoice, but you have all the other pertinent documents available to you. So that is the approval side of it. So I'm going to open it up for questions again. Any questions on how we approve invoices in TimberScan?
Yeah, we do have a question. Can TimberScan allow for multiple approvers?
Absolutely. You're going to have as many approvers as required, and you could even have approvers. You can even have send approvers on the fly. So let's say normally it goes from approver A to approver B, but you want approvers to see it as well, you can go into workflow and add an additional approver. You can also email right out of the system. So when you email right out of the system, it has automatically a copy of the invoice, and you could email it to somebody. And of course, you can reject invoices, you can print them, you can add notes if there's additional notes that you need to do. So absolutely, you can have as many approvers as are required. And you can have different number of approvers based on who's approving it. So if you have a superintendent that is approving it and needs to have a project manager approve it after they approve it, you can set that up. Or if it's going directly to the project manager, you can set that up as well. So there's tremendous flexibility as far as how you do the workflow within TimberScan. Good question.
All right. Can you associate the approver to a project?
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to show you that a little later. So when you set up your workflows, you can say, John Jones is responsible for these 10 projects. And then whenever an invoice is coded to that project, it's automatically going to go to John Jones. So you never have to do approval on the fly. You can preset your approvals based on each approver and what projects they're responsible for.
All right, we're caught up on questions for now.
Fantastic. Okay, so that covers it for the approval side of it and the mobile side of it. Now let's take a look at a couple other things that are really important in the system. We also talked about other types of documents. So within TimberScan, you can set up what's called document categories. And document categories are kind of your big file draw. So anything to do with payroll is a document category. Anything to do with project management is another document category. Job cost, finances. So you can set up all these different document categories. And when you set up a document category, you can also define who's allowed to see it. So when you set it up, when you set up the document category, you can also define who the users are. So Sandra and me as an administrator are the only ones that are allowed to see that category. So if one of the other people came in, they wouldn't even know that category payroll existed. And you can set the security down to the actual file as well. So it could be in the category, but even in a category, you can have certain sensitive documents that only certain people are allowed to see. So once you set up your different categories, the next step is setting up your document types. So if you go to your document types, let's say you go to job cost, you can have a whole bunch of different categories. So you can have as many as you want. So to create a new category, just click on create and you create a new category. So I've got these different categories set up and they're very easy to set up. And when you set up a category, what you want to do is obviously name the category, but the first thing that you want to do is specify how you want to code this. So with a change order, I'm coding it to a job, I'm coding it to a change order within Sage, and I'm also putting a date on it. So you can have as many different fields. As a matter of fact, when you go into the system, every field in Sage is available. So even if you have like an obscure payroll stuff, phases, even if you have something obscure, you can always code it to that obscure thing. The reason for coding is it makes it easy to find. So when you have your coding set up, you can search by anything that it's coded by. So once you set up the coding, the next thing you're going to set up is attach to. And this is telling the system where it's going to attach it in Sage. So I'm telling the system that when a change order is done, it's going to attach it to the job in Sage. Now you can set it up to attach to also to the vendor if you want, or whoever. so you can set it up where it attaches inside of Sage. You can also specify users. You can, if there's special users that do this, you can specify routing rules. So I've got two project managers. So Mike is one of the project managers. So this is his routing rules. This is his routing rules, and this that was workflows, and that's what I meant to do is routing rules. So you see how when I set up Mike, I set up the jobs that he's responsible for. So these are Mike's jobs. These are Bernard's jobs. So that's how it'll automatically route it. When you set this up. So that's as easy it is to set up all the different document types. If it doesn't need to be routed, you're just saving the documents. You don't have to go through all of this. But it can get that detailed so that you can control every document type and how the documents come in. So now when I go into Sage, for example, and let's say I go into my vendor file, my projects, my jobs, and let's say I pick this job here. I can see any change orders and drawings that relate to that job. So this came automatically from TimberScan. So here's a change order for that job. Of course, this is demo data, so don't really see it that well, but here's a drawing for that job. Here's a job picture. Here's a daily report on that job. I have all my daily reports coming in. So you see how valuable this is, because you don't have to do anything. So if you're in TimberScan, you can find whatever you want. If you're in Sage, you can find whatever you want. It's linked systems. It's an extension of Sage. Okay. So that's how you would set up other documents. So now when you have other documents come in, it's the same process. You go into Acquire. You specify the data entry group. You can have multiple data entry groups or one data entry group. Now I'm acquiring documents. I click on Select, and I come up with all my documents. I select the documents that I want. And once I select the documents, then the next step is my data entry. And here is my first document, which is W-9. So that's in AP. I go in and I select my W-9, and then you see how it changes. So this W-9 is for this vendor, Gray Heating, and I'm going to put my date in as 18/2019, and I'm going to save it. Okay, now my next document pops up. So now when I go into Sage, and I go into projects, actually I'm going to vendors, and I go to Gray Heating, and I go into my attachments. So here's my W-9. So it's as simple as that, how linked the systems are. Now with document automation, what you're doing is you're defining workflow tasks. Oh, actually, what I want to do next is user setup. We already did document automation. Sorry. My user setups is very easy. I can set up my users, define all my users and what roles they have, and then once I define my users, I can also define the workflows that each user has. So when I set up the routing rules, I can go in and set up all my users and define which jobs they have. So when I click on Edit, it allows me to go in and if I have a new job, it's really easy to add it. So all of that is very, very easy to do. A couple other things that are really important in TimberScan. One is our ability to search the system. So searching the system to find stuff, that's where the system really shines. So if I want to find, for example, under job cost, I want to find all my drawings for a particular job. I can select the category, I can select the document type, and then I can specify if it's for a specific job, or if I want to see the drawings for all jobs, I can do that as well. But I'm going to look for jobs, drawings for this job here. And when I click on search, it's going to show me I've got one drawing for that job. I can review that drawing. This was coded wrong, obviously. It's not. That's not a drawing. Oh, I did daily reports. Okay, so I meant to do drawings, but I did daily reports. So it found a daily report. So it's not. It's me. It's not the system. So now I'm going to do drawings, and I'm going to condition this, and I'm going to say drawings based on a job or vendor. So I'm going to go in based on a job, and I'm going to select the job and search my drawings. So here's my drawings for that job. I can see if there's an approval on it. I can see who approved it. So this was approved by BR on 12/12/12. So I can see who approved it. I can see any notes that are on that drawing. Show the log. I can see any notes. There weren't really any notes added, but it shows when it was acquired and who acquired it. I can add notes. I can edit. So all those capabilities are within the system. So the beauty of this is the ability to find stuff really quickly, because everything is in a SQL Server database. So you can go in and you can find anything, and you can select it any which way you want. So that's the strength of the system. Because if you're not using an electronic system, it's very easy to forget where you saved something. If you're using Microsoft, if you're using a file explorer and creating files in Microsoft, it's very, very, very easy to lose something. When you go in this, there's absolutely no control. There's no here. It's got logic to it, and stuff is saved, and nothing gets lost. And God forbid there's a lawsuit, and you need your daily reports in one place, or you need certain documents in one place. You're going to have all of them here available in Sage. One other report that I want to show you that's really cool is if we go into AP and we go into Invoices. We can select invoices, say, for a specific job. And I can obviously have multiple selections. I can select it by a date, based by a date range. So now I've got all my invoices for that date range for this job. Now, one of the things that TimberScan allows is the ability to create a report from this. So how often, if you're doing cost plus or time and materials, or if you need to make copies of invoices based on some criteria, that could be a pain in the neck because you have to go into multiple files and look at it. With this, you can do all your searching, filter it down to what you want, and then when you click on Show Invoice Report, it's going to print a report of all the invoices that you've selected. And it's also going to give you all the invoices in the order that it prints on the report. So here's a report that's 19 invoices. Make this a little easier to see. And so you can see that Baldwin is my first invoice so you see how it comes up with Baldwin. And I'll make this a little smaller so you can see it a little better. So, okay, so this invoice is $25,000, and you can see every every invoice, so on and so forth. So you can see all the invoices in order. Now, sometimes you use these reports and they're coded in date order. That's the default. But maybe I want these reports in cost code order. So by selecting cost code order and rerunning the report, I can see this report now in cost code order. So here's my cost codes. You can see it. And now when I see the pages, Beaverton is the first one, Gray Heating is the second one. You can see it's Beaverton, Gray Heating. So it's always coded. And now when you review this report, maybe you said, this particular invoice, 2555, shouldn't be on the report. So I can go in and I can deselect 2555, rerun the report, and now 2555 is not there. So you can really hone in to exactly what you want. And once you have that, you can create a PDF, send it to your customer to support your bill. All of that is built into the system. Any questions on what I've covered so far?
We do not have any questions in queue. If you guys do have questions, feel free to go ahead and ask away, and Bernard will answer them all.
Hopefully.
All right. Nothing yet.
So the big surprise is how reasonable the software is. So I suggest if this is something that could help you be more productive and more efficient, contact your salesperson at Alliance and get a quote. And I think you'll be very surprised on how affordable this powerful automation tool is.
All right, we did have a question pop in. Can the field enter invoices and receipts from TimberScan?
If you give them rights, they can. Absolutely. Yep. I wouldn't do it on a phone. I would do it on a laptop. But absolutely, you can, because it's a browser-based system. So you can enter anywhere. If somebody is at home, watching the kids or whatever, and they need to enter invoices, they can enter anywhere. You're not limited just to being in the office. Good question. I should have mentioned that. That's actually a very good question.
And when you say browser-based, what you're talking about is the user interface is through a browser. It's not, somebody doesn't have, people aren't going to a website, and so it's not a hosted solution, correct? It's
yes,
all installed on a local machine.
That's correct. It's browser-based, so the data is not in the cloud. The data is on your machine. But for security purposes, what we have is what's called a proxy server. So and the proxy server has all the security that's required, and it's only used to transfer stuff from your server to the field. So no data is saved in the proxy server. It's just for security purposes. So you don't have to open up a unmanned port on your server, which could be a security breach. We provide a proxy server which is totally secure. So the data flows from your computer into the proxy server down to whoever is working on it, and doesn't retain anything. It's just a port to transfer the information. But all the information sits on your server. It's secure on your server. It's not in the cloud. So we feel that that's a better solution than having to pay for hosting in the cloud.
All right, we are caught up on questions.
I hope that wasn't too technical, but if you do have more questions, I'm happy to answer them, and we thank you for your time.
Okay, everybody, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Actually, we do have one more question here. Can TimberScan talk to a Sage 100 that is SQL based on a cloud server? So sounds like their software is hosted.
Yes, yes. So if your software is hosted, it certainly can be set up and work through that hosted server.
Yeah, and I oversee our hosting partner relationships, and the one thing, if the software is hosted, and you do put a solution like TimberScan 100 on there, if you're going to start putting more and more documents in there, a lot of the hosting companies don't give you a whole lot of disk space up front, and so just something to be aware of, that you may end up needing to add a little bit more disk space here and there. And Michelle has a question. You're gonna Michelle, can you ask the question, or I can try to unmute you? Actually, Michelle, let me see if I can unmute you. Okay, 1 second.
All right. Can you hear us?
All right. Okay, we can hear you now.
Perfect. Michelle has a question. I do too. Rudy. Oh, well, I do have my question is: Do you need a Sage license per every T100, or do we need just one license and let's say 10 T100s?
You do not need any additional licenses with TimberScan. So there's no. So let's say you buy 5 TimberScan licenses, you don't have to buy any additional Sage licenses at all.
Great. Thank you. Great. You have a question, Michelle?
That was a very good question, because sometimes people think that if I add more users, it's going to cost me more on the Sage side. Absolutely not.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure.